Hello everyone, I'm Pastor Phil from the Door of Hope Church here in Maryborough, Queensland, Australia. We pray and hope that these videos and messages are of encouragement to you in your walk with the Lord. Hello to all our people from different regions in the country and the world. Blessings to you from here in Queensland. If you're benefiting from these videos, we'd encourage you to subscribe. And also, if you'd like notification when we upload new videos, we encourage you to ring the bell. If you'd like to make a donation to the ministry, there's a link in the comment section below. We pray and hope from the whole team here at Door of Hope that you be blessed by these videos.
Father God, we thank you for this time. We thank you for this moment within our service this morning and ask that all that we say and do will be guided by your Spirit. We ask, Lord, that you open our hearts to receive from yourself, whatever our circumstance, wherever we may be, whatever we're doing. We just ask, Lord, that the things that are said, the things that we heard, that you would speak to us, touch us, and just show us something or make us think differently so that you might be praised and honoured and we might grow in our understanding of you and your word. We thank you for all of this in the name of our Saviour, the Lord Jesus. Amen. 100 years ago, I always start with that now. Hand up those that are over 25. Do you want to hear the statement of the week? You were born last century. How's that make you feel? Huh? Good? Terrible statement, isn't it? When that was said to me, I thought about the 1800s. But now, yeah, it's terrible. I was born last century. Oh, terrible phrase. But back in that age, when I was beginning in Bible study, the students were getting up to date with what was high tech in those days. Reel-to-reel recorders. Big wheels of tape on which you could, through the mic, record the meeting or record the music or record whatever you want, and then at your own leisure, play it back. But you had to cart this recorder around, and it was that big. So, way back in those days, though, some of the students joined what was called a record club. And the record club would send out the record of the month. But this, of course, was, I think it was inspirational songs or something like that. And they would send a good long play vinyl record. Some of us remember those. Some of us might say, what? Okay. Yeah, what's that? It's a thing what you put on a thingamabob and put a thing on it, and it went round and round and the music came out the speakers and you were satisfied because you could hear it. But they would send out these records. But one that the students used to wait for more than anything else was what was called the YFC Annual Conference, Youth for Christ Annual Conference record. And recording, whatever we used to call them. Anyhow, we'd wait for this to come out because it was always good. It would have the latest songs, the latest choruses, the latest speakers. They would present it in a popular way. They would present their program. But I always remember one above everything else. It was at the beginning of the space race, when Russia versus America to get somebody or something into space or onto the moon or wherever. And it was in that decade that there was all this space stuff going on. And of course, this record that they put out this year started with a countdown, 10, 9, 8, right down. And what's the saying? If scientists are so smart, how come they count backwards? No, that's just minor. But anyhow, the countdown was there, and then on the recording, came the sound of the rocket taking off. And of course, you heard the thunderous roar as you could imagine because we had to do it by imagination. It wasn't picture, was it? It was all sound. Anyhow, as the rocket took off, and then of course, in came the orchestra. Just at the end of the countdown and the end of all the noise, in came the orchestra with it made ta-da, ta-da, look, minor. It came in with this crashing sound and wonderful sound, and then in burst the choir, And you know what song they sang? It took a miracle to put this world in place. It took a miracle to put the stars in place. But when he saved my soul, cleansed and made me whole, it took a miracle of love and grace. My Father is omnipotent, and that you can't deny, a God of might and miracle. 'Tis written in the skies, it took a miracle to put the universe in place. And that came out of that record, and I used to love it. And of course, this bit of tape probably wore out more than anywhere else. And don't ask me where that tape is now. I think it's somewhere in the shed at home. It's probably covered in dust, But it was something marvellous for me because what came after all of that? This great sound, this great music, this great song overcame the fellow doing the voiceover, and he said, "And when Jesus came down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. And a leper came unto him and knelt before him and worshipped him and said, 'Lord, if you will, you can make me clean.' 'I will,' said Jesus, 'be clean.' And immediately the leprosy left him. And Jesus said to him, 'See that you tell no man, but go and show yourself to the priest and get the certificate that's needed to declare you clean from your leprosy.' But he didn't do that. He went out and told everyone of what had happened. And of course, the fame of Jesus spread further, and great crowds followed him even more. And I've always loved early in the Gospels as you read them, how that Matthew, Mark and Luke and even John get into miracles so soon in their Gospels. But of course we live in an age where miracles don't happen, do they? There's no such thing as a miracle. If you're going to talk about miracles and use that as an argument in anything concerning God, religion, the earth and how everything else ticks, don't bother. It's not admissible. And I say to that, rubbish. Rubbish. Because you start with God. Our Father is omnipotent, a God of miracles, and that you can't deny. And you've only got to go through ordinary secular life. And there are thousands upon thousands of people who will say, a miracle happened. I am now free of that disease. I am now free of that sickness. I have been cured. Such and such happened and it was a miracle. We haven't got rid of the word, but people don't want to believe in miracles. But they still happen. And I believe it's God's hand upon it, whether the person be a follower of God or not. God still works miracles within people's lives. You can't deny it. But this leper came to Jesus. This leper. You all know about leprosy, don't you? You can run a dialogue on it. It's only that I've looked it up during the last week that I'm aware that leprosy has 3 forms. The one form is this, one form is that, and the third form is this and that. Okay, it's a combination of both. But leprosy begins with a skin problem. Can develop into nodules. The nodules grow. They deform face, they deform hands, they deform feet. And it also attacks the nervous system, and because of lack of feeling, people with leprosy, a lot of their deformity is caused by that lack of feeling, that they'll pick up a hot iron and not know it's hot, and so they've scalded or burnt their limb in one way or another, and that becomes infected, and all the other things happened. The nervous systems are attacked and all sorts of things happened. They can't blink, so dust gets in their eyes, and blindness is associated with leprosy. And over the time of studying leprosy and trying to find out cures for it and ways it can be dealt with, there's been a lot go on in the last 150 years. They discovered that leprosy is spread by coughing and sneezing and, the moisture that you expel. And they, being aware that this is what takes place, they sort of isolated the people, put masks on them. We don't know anything about that, do we? But they put the masks on them so that they wouldn't spread the disease. But from way back, because there was no cure for leprosy, the leper had to be put out of society. Have you ever been lonely? Ever thought that nobody cares? That you're on your own? That's nothing to what a leper might feel. Because a leper was put out of society. They were put out of their home. They were put out of their village. They were put out of their city. They weren't allowed to go to their synagogue or their church or their meeting place or take any part in society. They were to wear clothes that had been torn. They were to have dishevelled hair. They were to wear a covering over their upper lip. This is from Leviticus. And if they had to wear that, to me, probably that was the forerunner of a mask to stop that breath and spread of the bacteria or whatever it was that caused it. And they have discovered that it was 2 bacteria. The latest one was discovered in 2008. So it's something that they've discovered pretty recently as to what is a cure. But over time, there were drugs and medicines found that delayed leprosy, cured leprosy, and it was I nearly used the word godsend, which is what it was. It was to the leper a godsend because their disease was now either under control or cleared up. The leper that Jesus healed, the one who had to go to the priest and then go through that I use the word rigmarole in a right sense, that procedure of showing himself to the priest, of making the offerings that were required, going away for 7 days and coming back again and, going through it again, shaving all the hair off the body, then presenting themselves to the priest, getting the certificate that you were cleansed. My mind went on a little journey. Can go lots of places, my mind. But I thought about this. Here's the archaeologist digging away at the site and comes across an old parchment, lifts it up and it says, certificate of clearance to Jonas, Levi, so-and-so, no longer having leprosy. And then they trace it even further and they discover that this certificate belonged to the leper that came to Jesus. Wouldn't that be a find? Wouldn't that be a find? But this is what the leper had to get if he thought he was clear. Had to go through all this humiliation, if you like, had to go through all this procedure and then come with the certificate and say to all those who knew that he had formerly been a leper, say, here's my certificate of cleanliness. Here's my certificate that says I'm okay. The leper was not allowed to come within 6 feet of another person. Apart from wearing torn clothing, dishevelled hair, they had to also call out, unclean. Unclean. In other words, if I were going near Jo and had leprosy, she'd have warning that I'm a leper. And I would have to declare it, that I'm a leper. And I would either have to keep 6 feet away from her or keep, out of the way altogether. And if I got too close, she'd be allowed to throw stones at me. Right? But I haven't got leprosy, so bad luck, mate. But could you imagine yourself a leper? Do you know in the Middle Ages, churches had slots in them? These were called leper slots. The leper could be outside and peer in and see what was going on in the service. Within the synagogue, there was a special room made that was possible for lepers to be in. but they weren't to come anywhere else. They were shunned. They were cut off. Now, my mind suddenly jumps to this. Leprosy is such a picture in the Scripture of sin, of wrongdoing, of slip-ups, of error, or whatever you want to call it. Sin's its proper name. But sin cuts us off from God. Your iniquities have separated between you and your God that he will not hear. Leprosy was such a separation for the person. Sin is such a separation for us from God, and we don't even think about it. But we like to think there's a procedure we have to go through in order to get a certificate to come back and say, I'm a forgiven sinner. That's not so. We are now able to come back to God through what Jesus Christ has done for us. Peter puts it lovingly, wonderfully, and I love the verse, and it says, Christ died for our sin in order to bring us to God. Christ died for us in order to bring us to God. Jesus, of course, said, no man comes to the Father but by me. And so you have this picture of the leper, you have this picture of our sin, and you can see what Jesus has done for us. Now, when that leper came, now, how come he came to Jesus? He knew he should stay away. And I wonder if Jesus was coming down the road, the crowd following him, and the leper came along calling out unclean, but Jesus didn't stop his pace, but walked right up to the leper. And the leper called out and said, if you can, you will make me clean. And Jesus said, I will. What did the crowd do? I wonder if they moved back from Jesus as Jesus moved closer to the leper. It seems sometimes to us as we read through the life of Jesus that he started off and the crowds followed him, and then later the crowds turned on him. They drew back from him. They drew back. The leper came and worshipped Jesus, fell on his knees before him and worshipped him. And what did Jesus do? Put forth his hand and touched him. How long since you've had a good hug? How long since you've had a good hug? Maybe a while, but you can still do it. The leper was not allowed to be touched by anybody. Such was his separation. No physical touch with any other person. It'd be like what? If you brought supplies to him, you'd come, you'd leave them, you'd go away, and they would have to come and pick them up. And you wouldn't touch that gear ever again. It'd be in the fire or somehow destroyed. They were cut off. But Jesus reached out his hand and touched. Such was his compassion and care for the predicament of the leper. What about the predicament of the sinner? Cut off from God? The only possibility is eternal death. Yet Jesus came in order to save us from that. More than putting out his hand and touching us, he went to a cross. He was nailed to that cross. He suffered those thorns. He suffered everything else that was thrown at him for you and for me, in order that our relationship with God might be restored. Where do I get all this? From reading the Bible. Don't read the Bible, it's dangerous. No, make sure you do read it. There are people who say miracles can't happen, the Bible's not true, but as we read it, you find line upon line, story upon story, and they're not stories, they are reports of what took place. You see the goodness and the greatness of God, and I know there are passages there that make you scratch your head and you say, I can't quite get this together. That'll happen again and again. But be prepared to say, right, I'll put that aside for now and I'll read the rest. And probably something will come across, you'll come across, and it'll make that bit that's awkward clear and plain again. But read it because it presents who Jesus is. I've been reading recently, just again, the problem that our present world has with accepting God, the Bible, Jesus. And we have here what we say is good evidence. It's more than good evidence, it's spectacular, really. And like I've said earlier, thousands of people have had miracles. And the things that are reported concerning Jesus in the New Testament, the things concerning the people of God in the Old Testament, they are verified over and over again, not just by the Bible, but by outside historians as well. And as Phillip said the other day, there is lots of evidence about the truth of the gospel, of the people who wrote it and who were there. Remember what Paul writes about the resurrection? He appeared unto Peter and to others and to over 500 brothers. If they had their wives and children there, it'd be bigger than 500, but appeared to 500 people at once. 500 hallucinated people, 500 liars, 500, confused people? No. And it goes on and on and on. Now, I can remember reading years ago that, I think it was Josh McDowell, he said that the evidence for the life of Jesus is within 50 years of the events. And we have written records that show that. For Caesar, Julius Caesar, and his Punic Wars, wherever they took place, right? The oldest, best manuscript that they have for that is over 900 years from the event. Now, historians do not deny that Caesar existed, but there are people who say Jesus Christ is just a myth. Come on, if you want to argue, if you want to reason what's true, what's closest, what has the best evidence, over and over and over again it comes out that what the Gospels say have the best evidence. I have no trouble in believing this. What you believe is your business, but know what it says. Then you know what you're knocking back, or you know what you're accepting. Now, let me move on from there to the forgiveness of sin. To the forgiveness of sin. Jesus said, if you don't believe me, believe the things I do, because they show to you that the kingdom of heaven has come. In Matthew 12, verse 28, Jesus said, but if I cast out demons by the Spirit of God, surely the kingdom of God is among you, has come upon you. If I cast out demons, surely the kingdom of heaven is among you. In saying that, Jesus was saying, well, okay, you won't accept me, you won't accept what I'm saying, but at least look at what has taken place. Something special is taking place. And of course, the gospel writers again, hey, they don't muck about with getting into miracles. You haven't got to read far into John's gospel, then you come to what? The marriage feast at Cana of Galilee. And John wonderfully records for us, this beginning of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and his disciples believed on him. He was glorified and his disciples believed on him. John starts off with a miracle, and John in his gospel gives miracle after miracle after miracle, 7 of them if you want, simply to say, many other things did Jesus which are not written in this book, but these are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, and that believing you might have life through his name. Wonderful statement. Oh, it was only by John. Hey, hold on a minute. John spent all that time with Jesus. John wrote a letter at the end of the Bible, and in it he says, that which we have seen and touched and handled of the word of life is who we declare to you. I was there. What's the old chorus that you used to sing? You ever used to sing it? I was there when it happened, and I ought to know. His spirit burning in me set my heart aglow. So I praise the Lord today. He's taken my sin away. And I forget the last line, so you'll have to not know what it is. I was there. When God touches your life, you're there. And you know what happened. And, okay, two things. It's real or you're disillusioned. I believe what God's doing in your life is real. But, okay, Jesus continues, or the gospel writers continue on. You know what happens quickly in Mark's gospel? In Mark chapter 2, verse 10. I think I have a mark in there. Mark 2, verse 10. But that you may know that the Son of Man has power on earth to forgive sin. He said to the paralytic, I say to you, arise, take up your bed, go to your house. Oh, and that created a stir. Who has the power to forgive sins, says the Pharisee, says the Sadducee, says the ultra-right Jew, says the people of the time. Only one person can forgive sin, God. And Jesus is simply putting down the challenge to these people because he said to the paralytic, Son, your sins be forgiven you. And some of the scribes were sitting there and reasoning in their hearts, why does this man speak blasphemies like this? Who can forgive sin but God alone? But immediately when Jesus perceived in his spirit that they reasoned thus within themselves, he said to them, why do you reason like that? But that you might know that the Son of Man has authority to forgive sin, he says to the man, pick up your bed, go home and walk. And he did. Again, Jesus demonstrating his power and also demonstrating the wonder that he's able to forgive sin. And we also have in later on in John chapter 10, again, Jesus saying something similar to perhaps what I was trying to say. Verses 37. If I do not the works of my Father, do not believe me. But if I do, though you do not believe me, believe the works, that you may know and believe that the Father is in me and I in him. Therefore they sought to seize him all the more because he made himself equal with God. And in chapter 14, it says similar things about, if you don't believe what I say, at least have a good hard look at what I do. In John 14, verses 10 and 11. Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father in me? The words that I speak to you, I do not speak on my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does the works. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father in me, or else believe me for the sake of the works themselves. Who I am and what I am, says Jesus, speaks enough. But that you might know that the Son of Man has power on earth to forgive sin. Can I go back to the leprosy and the separation? Can I remind you again that it is your sin that separates you from God? And it means that you have to acknowledge that and come willingly to Jesus to have your sin forgiven. The leper again coming to Jesus. Yes, he'd have been shouting out, unclean, unclean. But think of this. Every time before his cleansing, he had to say, I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner. I know I'm filthy. I know I'm wretched. I know I'm separated from the community. I know I'm not allowed here. I know this. Unclean, unclean. And we need to realise that ourselves too when it comes to our sin. That we are not perfect. And you know in your Christian walk that still you're not perfect. But that imperfection, that sin that causes any separation between you and God is forgivable. But the only one who has the authority to forgive it is Jesus Christ. He is the only one who can forgive you your sin. You could go through all the procedures like the leper, doesn't count anything. It's committing yourself to Jesus and accepting the forgiveness that he works. Changing your life from what it is through the power that he gives you, that you might live for him. But if I say anything to this morning, perhaps it's this. Sin is like leprosy. You are separated from God until that sin is cleansed. And it can only be cleansed and forgiven by Jesus Christ. Let's pray. Father God, thank you for the awareness you give to us, sometimes now and then, but it doesn't change the truth that we are sinners. But Lord, we praise you and thank you that through your Son, you have made a way for us to be restored to you, to be back in fellowship with you, to be on the right path because you now lead and guide our lives and we commit ourselves to you. Thank you, Lord, for your word. Thank you for the wonderful truth that Jesus Christ has the authority to forgive sin, and he forgives each one of us as we trust. Thank you, Lord, for your love. Thank you for your guidance. In Jesus' name, amen.